Hey everybody, welcome to Artist Decoded. This is your host Yoshino. If you're listening to the podcast for the first time, welcome. If you are listening to this again, thank you for coming back. Just a little bit of information for everyone, but yesterday, September 3rd, 2023, was Artist Decoded's 8th birthday. Yeah, I can't believe that I've been putting these podcasts out for 8 years, but it feels really good, and I love to have conversations with people that I find inspiring. It's an incredibly rewarding feeling to be able to hear from viewers just like yourself, or listeners rather, just like yourself, about the podcast and how much it's affected your life. And yeah, so I'm excited to continue to go on with the podcast. I haven't been releasing a lot of podcasts this year, but I've been really busy with another project that it just has been taking a lot of time. It's a new medium-ish, new-ish medium for me. And yeah, I'll tell you more about it on a later date. But anyways, to introduce you to my guest for today, her name is Dan Lamb. She is an artist based out of Texas, and let me read you a little bit from her bio. Lamb's sculptural work expresses and plays with sensational dichotomies by combining unconventional materials, organic forms, and bright colors. With contrasting themes verging on beauty and grotesqueness at once, Lamb's art evokes its viewers to ponder meaning and existence while inspiring feelings of familiarity and wonder. Curiosity, play, and fun are the foundation of where Lamb's work begins. Her experimentation results in beautiful sculptures created with various materials such as foams, polyurethanes, resins, acrylics, and polymers, which defines her style. She has been exhibited worldwide and has celebrity clients that include Miley Cyrus, Demi Lovato, The Game, and Lily Aldridge. In addition, Lamb has collaborated with prominent companies including Facebook and Virgin, and renowned art producers Meow Wolf. Her pieces have been featured in Architectural Digest, Travel and Leisure, and Forbes, to name a few, among many other international media outlets. So I really hope that you all enjoy this episode. I personally loved talking with Dan. I found that our conversation was very electric and fluid, and it was just a fun conversation to have. So here it is, my conversation with Dan Lamb. Oh, and before I forget, but please go to our iTunes page, leave us a review there, or go to our Spotify page where you can click on that 5-star review. It literally takes a quarter of a second. Trust me, I've timed it out. It's literally 1/4 of a second. You can spare a quarter of a second, can't you? I mean, think about all the seconds, not even a quarter of a second, but all of the seconds that you waste throughout your day on TikTok or on Instagram or something like that. And you're telling me you can't go on Spotify right now and click a quarter of a second. Come on. Anyways, before I bloviate anymore, but here is my conversation with Dan Lamb, and I hope you all enjoy it. Thanks for listening. So I guess I wanted to just kind of like dive in and ask you about maybe just simply how you got into art. Like, were you always doing things art related when you were a child, or is that something that developed like later on in life?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely would say that I have been artistic or creative since I was a kid. I'm an only child, and my mom
Mm,
worked when I was growing up. So, I had a lot of time to entertain myself and figure out what to do after school and all that stuff. But,
hmm.
my mom's also really creative. So I think that was, I saw that in her when I was younger, and it kind of like led me down a path of like painting and drawing. Um,
Hmm.
because she would draw when I was little, and I would like just sit and watch her. She used to do like a portrait of me every year, and like a
Wow.
pencil drawing. Yeah. And so I would every
Do you
year
have
when it
all of
was like,
those?
she might have them. That's a good question because I don't remember. I talk about this a lot, but I have not actually asked her if she has the drawings.
Mm,
Um, but I remember every year being really excited for her. So I would like bring her her pad, her sketchbook, and like a pencil and just sit for her. So, little memories like that. But
hmm.
yeah, since I was little, I would like make stuff with my hands or and as soon as I was old enough or the public schools that I was in offered art classes, like I was always in those.
Nice.
So yeah, it's been cultivated for a long time.
Nice, nice.
Yeah.
You and I both are only children, so I understand what that life is like. I mean, everyone, not that every only child has the same experiences, obviously, but there is
Yeah.
a certain stereotypes about only children, but also I think
Uh-huh.
like only children have to interact with the world in a different way than if you have siblings in, in the same house as you, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
something. So I definitely agree. There are like stereotypes with only children, but
Do you think any of them are
I think
true for you?
so. Okay. So I mean, I wasn't spoiled because my mom, as like I think like as an Asian mom, she was not
Hmm.
about that.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, but I actually have realized a few things as I got older. Like,
Hmm.
um, I'm, I'm not used to sharing space with like
Mm,
people my age, like roommates or anything like that. So
of
that was like a
course.
whole like learning experience that like in college, oh my gosh, like just little nuanced stuff, but then people would always be like, oh, it's because you're an only child. And I'm like,
Mm.
oh, I guess that makes sense. Like,
Yeah.
you don't have to like when it comes to stuff like food, like you buy something and you just have it in the kitchen and it's yours. But like if someone else lives with you, then suddenly it's also theirs. And like, I just like was never used to that.
It creates such a cognitive dissonance. You're like, no, I
Yeah,
bought that for myself, and
right.
yeah, yeah.
So little things
So
like
funny.
that.
Yeah.
But like as far as like the main stereotypes of like, oh, you're like selfish or spoiled and like you're always
Mhm.
used to getting your way and stuff like that, I don't think so. Um, and I also like, from a young age, I went to daycare and like was around other kids. So, I learned how to share and stuff like that. But,
Sure,
um,
sure. Yeah.
so I don't think that that's what I think, but maybe other people might say differently.
Yeah, yeah. Let's ask the
Yeah.
audience, let's ask some of your
Yeah.
closest friends about about their experiences
Yeah.
with you. No, I'm just kidding. But so I was curious too, like so it sounds like you had a very creative childhood. You were able to express yourself, and also your mother was an artist as well. But when did you decide, like, was it in college that you wanted to pursue this full time, or do you remember like a specific situation where you're like, oh, this could really be something that I want to pursue as like a career as opposed to just something that you do for yourself?
So I didn't think about it as a career until I got to college. I knew in high school that I wanted to go down like a creative path. I took a creative writing class. I was in a bunch of art classes. And I remember having this like moment of like, well, like so dramatic as a teenager, right? It was like, I have to choose what I want to be. Do I want to be a writer or do I want to be an artist? And of course, like those things now, it's like there's really no definition or line between them in my eyes. But back then it was like, again, dramatic teenager. And I remember choosing, visual arts. And I told my mom, and she was like, well, you have to do something that's going to make you money. So we compromised, and I majored in communication design my first year. And that was kind of the whole thing, right? I could go to art school, but it has to be in something that was more practical. Um,
What is
and
communication design? Like, what does that necessarily entail from a structural point of view? I mean, or in terms of getting a degree?
so, I mean, it's basically graphic design, but I think it also encompassed other, I think that's just what they call the program. I mean, I think it was just graphic design.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
I'm just
but
curious. I'm just curious how
yeah,
how the decision was made, like communication design. Because I don't know. I'm just curious. Because you went to
yeah.
Arizona State, is that correct?
I went to University of North Texas for my undergrad, which is where I started with
Where did I
the
get
graphic
Arizona
design.
State from?
But then I went to Arizona State for my master's.
Okay, so I didn't just like
Yeah.
totally take that out of the
No, no.
ether. Yeah. I'm
No.
like, there is a college in Arizona
Yeah.
and you might have went
Yeah.
there. Okay, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
That's where I got it from. Okay,
That's accurate. Yeah.
cool.
Um, yeah, so I started out in that program and it was really, really tough. There was, I think it was tough on multiple levels. One, because I wasn't used to expressing myself that way. I was used to using art as a means for my own self-expression. And I was suddenly in this structure of needing to of needing to communicate visually for somebody else, for a client, for a company, whatever. And I just was not used to that. I was like, this is so weird. It was so hard. I couldn't connect with it. And I was also doing like studio art classes at the time, like figure drawing, like life drawing, all of that, or like just regular drawing or whatever.
Hmm.
And my professors in those classes, they like told me, they said, you need to switch to studio art. And they kept telling, like, there was two specifically, but yeah, they was just like, they looked at my drawings and they were like, you really, really need to switch to studio art. And at the time I was just like, oh, I mean, intuitively I was like, this feels like the right path, but I was like, maybe they're just saying it just to be nice or whatever. But finally after the year in communication design, I was like, no, I need to, because there were like review processes and I needed
Hmm.
to go through review. And I was like, I don't think I'm going to make it through. And I don't want to do another year of just to keep trying. So yeah, I was like, I told my mom, I was like, I'm going to switch to studio art. We had a fight about it. She wasn't happy to hear that because she was like, what are you going to do? Like, what are you going to do? Be an artist?
Uh-huh.
And, I
And
was
look, here
like,
you are
yeah,
now, an
yeah,
artist.
yeah, it worked
Yeah,
out.
yeah.
But yeah, it was tough because it definitely felt like kind of jumping off the deep end because it didn't have any of that, like job security or anything like that. But I did it. And, that's actually one of the reasons why I went and got my master's after that was because I was like, well, if you have your master's, you can then go on to teach as like an adjunct or become a professor or whatever. Um, as like a job. And
Hmm.
so that was one of the reasons I went on to get my master's just to have some form of like something like an income. Um,
Hmm.
but yeah, so that was the point. After like a year in undergrad, that was when I was like, okay, I guess I'm going to do this.
Mm. And have you done any sort of teaching roles outside of like doing workshops or anything? Or, I mean, have you been a professor at any universities?
So after I graduated, I did teach at a community college for a year,
Mm.
2 semesters, and I taught art appreciation.
Mm. What's that?
Art appreciation is kind of like a survey of art. It was for non-art majors,
Uh-huh.
and so it was very broad. It covered like
Uh-huh.
all the things, very light surface covering of like basic design concepts and
Yeah.
principles, like
That
some
sounds
light
like a
art
fun
history.
class.
Yeah, it was good, and it was
Yeah.
nice because it was
I
kind of
like the
like
name of it too.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
art appreciation. Who doesn't want to take an art appreciation course? I mean,
yeah.
I appreciate art, you appreciate art.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was good because it was nice. Like, I had been in school for so long and I was so deep into it. And then it was nice to kind of like step back and look at art from a outsider's perspective almost to like, oh, I'm
Hmm.
going to be teaching people who don't really care about art, but maybe they're a little curious and what
Hmm.
might make them more curious. What topics could I pick or what could I
Hmm.
do?
Hmm.
Um, so I did that for a year and then I moved and I was kind of like in between stuff. And I was like, it was an option. I could go teach or try, apply to teach at some universities here in North Texas.
Hmm.
Um, but I didn't. And my career, like I started showing and um, yeah, so I haven't been back. I haven't been back to teach. And I think maybe in the future that would be a really cool thing to do because now I have like real life experience as an artist,
Totally.
you
Of
know,
course.
um, and so there's a lot more I could offer
Of
students.
course.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you can offer them like so much wisdom from, it's one thing about theorizing, like being an artist, but actually like living and supporting yourself from your art, that's like a whole another thing. And to be able to give that wisdom, impart that to students, I think is incredibly valuable, so much more than I feel like someone that is just a professor. But that is just
Mhm.
from my point of view, if I were a student again wanting to learn from someone, I'd want to learn from someone who has real life experience,
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that every artist that I talk to that goes through art school, every single one talks about that, not having
Mm,
any classes or any kind of support around that aspect of being an artist. So, we go to school and we learn theory. Maybe some schools are more technical and they teach you how to paint, stuff like that. But a lot of it is
mm,
just theory and critique and talking about art.
mm,
Um, and nobody's teaching about like how to practical stuff, like how to get into galleries or
yeah.
how to use social media
How to do
or
your
even,
taxes.
oh my gosh, that's like,
I always I always thought that is like that every college should offer that specific course.
yeah,
I mean, maybe perhaps they do, but even when I was in business school, um, I didn't have like a specific this is how you do your taxes course, which I think is incredibly valuable.
yeah.
And
Oh my
especially, I mean,
God.
even for artists, I mean, well, taxes, it it affects everyone, right? So
Yeah.
it's like one of those things.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
especially for artists, because we're just kind of like, I don't know.
It's
There's
kind
just
of
like, there's so
it's
little structure. And
totally.
yeah, I don't know with
It's like the
taxes. So
wild, wild
basically it's like,
west, right?
yeah, it is.
Or it can
So
be
it could
like the
be,
wild, wild west. Yeah,
yeah. And you could
totally.
approach it as like small business owner, or you could approach it as entrepreneur, like there's so many ways. But yes, like a
Mhm.
basic taxes course would be amazing. I
Totally.
would take that class now.
Totally. Totally.
Yeah.
And so, speaking of that, so how do you approach? Oh, actually, before I ask this question, I was going to ask how do you approach your art? Like, what way do you think about it? Because you said, thinking about it from the small business side or like the entrepreneurial side. But before I ask that question, even though I just asked it, I want to ask you, how do you think your art has changed from when you were in your undergrad through your master's? And what do you think are like the most valuable things that you learned during that time period?
How has my work changed from undergrad to grad and till now, or just between those that
Just
that
between
shift?
those, and then we can extrapolate on the further, you know what I mean? Because I feel like
Okay.
that's like a lot to dissect in one question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So between undergrad and grad, I didn't have much time in between. I think it was only like a semester in between.
Hmm.
So my work, I mean, it went straight in. Like the work I did in undergrad into grad school, aesthetically, a lot of like the same visual. I mean, I think even it's now, obviously. But one of my big things was developing my voice. So I was really big on like, it wasn't intentional, like I need to define my voice, but it was just like, well, what interests me? What do I like? What don't I like? And like, just really searching for that. Um,
Hmm.
and so as a result, I think my work started looking very different than my peers' work.
Hmm.
Um, I I would say like between undergrad and grad, it got a lot more focus because that is the nature of grad school where you have to create like, a body of work and you present it to get your master's and all that. So
Hmm.
that was something that I think initially kind of struggled with because I was very much, I think like a lot of undergrad, you're kind of all over the place. You're
Yeah.
looking at a lot of different things, doing a lot of different things. So
Yeah.
the ability to hone in on something and like really focus was, I think, really valuable because I think there's this thing about like sometimes, you think, oh, I'm getting bored of something. And I think sometimes that moment is like, okay, well, you start to question like, why do I find this boring? What is it about this? Or what's making me so antsy, and like, why can't I push past this? Like, what happens if I push past this? What reveals itself past that point? So stuff like that, like, it's like there were moments when I was working on my thesis where it was just like, I just want to change it all up and do something completely different. But, time didn't allow for that. The structure of school didn't allow for that. So it was like eye opening, like, oh, wow, if I really continue to push, then that's actually where you start to develop more of your voice. Cause I think there are points in time where everyone kind of stops and they're like, yeah, I want to move on. I want to do something else. I'm distracted or I'm like, whatever. Um, but yeah, once you start doing that, it's like, oh yeah, there's nuance and like detail here unique and specific to me. Um, so yeah, I'd say that's the biggest difference is like going from more broad to more specific.
Hmm. And then, so during that time period when you were really trying to understand your own interests, I think that's what you said, right? Is like really
Mhm.
trying to develop your voice by understanding your interests. Is that correct?
Mhm. Yeah.
So, what things do you think you were interested then that stay true now? And what are things that have changed in terms of like you understanding how you can add more like a nuanced thought to your the way that you do things?
What has stayed true? Um, so I think there's like maybe two main things, two on two different levels. One is purely on the making level. I'm still super interested in material.
Mm-hmm.
It's that has not changed at all. Like, and the more, like the more into it I get, more into like my career and the more time that passes and the more that technology develops and all that, there's just more and more materials. So that's like a constant source of like exploration and research. What can I use? Or I have ideas and it's like, what can I find to make these ideas happen? That kind of thing. And
Mm-hmm.
then the other is on the more like conceptual side. I've always been interested in ideas that are seemingly opposing. Like, so things that feel so like, a lot of my grad school work was about beauty and repulsion. And so those two things seem to oppose each other. But, you could also look at it like they balance each other. You need one to have the other, like yin and yang, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think that space in between those opposing concepts or balancing concepts, there's space there to explore. It's not black and white. There's a lot. So I find that as time has progressed, like I am still interested in that kind of dichotomy or dynamic.
Mm. I like that. I like that.
Yeah.
How do you think that you've explored the sort of gray areas or the um I suppose, I mean, because when you say something like that, I think immediately I think about the Kabbalion and how it's more about balancing of forces, not necessarily defining things as specifically good or specifically bad, but understanding that things are on a scale,
Mhm.
that emotions are just on separate poles. And like you said, uh, it's like, these things like define each other. It's even like the Tao Te Ching. I don't know a specific like passage, but it speaks of how different forces that seem to be on completely opposite sides are just things that define each other, right? And so
Mhm.
thinking about that more in terms of like balance than trying to paint like black and white pictures around things. I mean, you can think about this also in terms of just like people's political views and how it's like more so these like polarizing forces. But at the end of the day, I think we all generally want the same things. And so I guess in terms of those ideas, finding the dichotomy, like how do you think you do that now in your work?
That's a tough. That's that's hard for me. Um,
No, it's
I
okay. I mean, no,
think
it's just an exploration. Like,
yeah, yeah.
like I'm down to just, go in there, So
Yeah. So I think more recently, so one thing that I found is that with more time, I kind of see that like sometimes it's not within one piece. I'm exploring two different opposing concepts, but actually over time, maybe one body of work, one moment in time is about one, and then the next is about the other.
Mm.
And I wouldn't have known that had I not continued just like making the work that I do. And and then the other part is that it comes with hindsight. So sometimes, like I think one of the biggest things for me, like post school, was this whole idea of unlearning school. So,
Mm.
that this was like a really big topic that a lot of the artists that I went to hear, like their artist lectures or artist talks, so many of them would talk about unlearning. And at the time, in school, I'm like, what are they talking about? Like, I don't understand what unlearning means when I'm actually in school to learn. Um, and then once I got out of school, I was like, oh yeah, I get it. I see what they're talking
Yeah.
about now. So it's about you learn all this stuff and you kind of start to like almost like deconstruct it to it's like, well, then you start to question what you've been taught, why you've been taught it, who was teaching it to you, just all these elements of it that you weren't really like thinking about while you're in the middle of it. And so one of the things for me was like, coming from academia, they stress so much like the conceptual and creating art from a certain place. And what I've learned for myself is that like, and there are artists who speak about this, so I'm not alone in this, which is really nice. But in the academic setting, it's not really accepted. But like, if you create from an intuitive place, when you tell someone that in school, they're like, no, that's what? Like, they're like, they don't believe you. And I actually was met with that quite a few times. Um, so then you're then taught like, oh, listening to your intuition when making art is bad. It's not good. It's not accepted. Right. And you're kind of like shamed out of it because it's not smart enough, I guess, or like there's something about it that's just not intellectual enough. And as time has gone on and I've realized, I've been free to just be myself and make my art the way I want to make it without any outside voices dictating what I do. I've realized like, no, like that's the place I create from. And I don't think for myself and for a lot of other artists, I think creativity and art doesn't always come from here, from the brain. I think it comes from something else. And and then just like accepting that, like that, that's okay. Um, so anyway,
I love
that's like
that.
a,
I
yeah.
love that. I
And no, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna say that to your point. So I've been spending a lot of time writing, and with this time writing, I've also been watching a lot of like interviews and listening to podcasts with writers. And Neil Gaiman specifically, I always come back to because I mean he's amazing, obviously, but also he's just such a great speaker, and he puts himself out there in ways to help other artists in general, you know. And I think something that he says is, uh, and I'm paraphrasing, but the idea is like doing something that's very personal to you. And if you're from what you're saying, and I've been through this being an artist my whole life, is this idea of over intellectualizing things
Mhm.
and um I think it's such a huge part of capitalistic society or just modern culture to over intellectualize everything. And how could it not affect like everything you do if you're constantly over intellectualizing everything,
Mhm.
And there's so much information that's coming at us at all the time. And I don't know if you have you ever read any of Marshall McLuhan's work. So he's famous for this idea called the medium is the message. And I can send you this book. Actually, it's a PDF, and it has he worked with this. I forget who the name of the artist is, but he worked with an artist. So there's a lot of visuals to it. It's very enjoyable because it's and you can literally read it in like an hour. But um, essentially, the idea behind the medium is a message is that all these new technologies that come out, they change us in ways in which generally people are not super conscious of. I mean, yes, it's been intellectualized and written about and all of these things, but if you're just the person consuming it and, looking at your phone and, being constantly distracted by this device and so much information's coming at you at all times, it's going to affect you, right? And so there's all these things nowadays, especially that pulls you away from your intuition because you're getting uh basically like information is getting shoved down your throat at all times of the day, you know? And so I think like saying all of that, but what do you think is the thing like after school, it sounds like, because it sounds like, you know, you couldn't tell the forest between the trees, sort of sort of a thing, right? And what do you think the thing is that started to reconnect you with your intuition?
I think my intuition has always been strong. You know, I think the years of using art as self-expression, being a kid from when I was a kid and all of that stuff, like that had trained me to listen to my intuition. But then going into and through school, that's when it was like suddenly not okay. And so, yeah, I think just being out of it and having space away from it and then deciding for myself what was right, what was wrong, not wrong, but you know, what was right for me, um, kind of cleared the path. And I also think when I made my thesis work and I presented it, the feedback that I got was really, really positive. Like a lot of my peers were like so excited about my work. And I just like I felt the energy of that, you know, and I still, even though I still created from an intuitive place, I just didn't tell the professors like this, you know, this is where I'm making it from. I had my, you know, like I would write about the work and like really deeply think about it and I could talk about it. And so you know, I think that to them that's like acceptable. But the fact that I was making something that felt very still true to me, and then for it to be received in such an honest way from the people around me, like that was kind of a reassurance of like, you're doing the right thing. And then
Yeah.
of course, like once I started sharing it with other people, like online and seeing that it resonated with a lot of other people too, it's like that is impactful because you know, I mean, it's a little bit of like a delicate balance there with like sharing on social media and this feedback loop of what's good or bad, whatever. But just like feeling an actual authentic excitement from people. It's like, oh, you know, I'm making something that like others connect with. And I think there's something very like powerful there.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially when you're creating it from a very honest place, you know,
Hmm.
and when people when that is well received, I mean, I think that well, I was going to say I think that can only be a positive thing, you know, but I think as long as you can continue to create from an honest place and not just create from a place where you constantly appease other people, you know,
Hmm.
like constantly taking a step back. Actually, I'm curious, do you ever like have some downtime and take a step back and think like, oh, you know, am I still creating from an honest place, or do you have those sort of questions or
Yeah. Um, for sure. That's my relationship with social media, I think is a constant. I try to keep that always in check. And
yeah.
so I don't share very often. Like I
Mm.
don't share the way like, you know, the way you're supposed to, which is like, oh, like what, post
Yeah.
like once a day or, you know, whatever. I don't do
Yeah.
any of that. And
Mm.
so even in like my sharing,
Mhm.
um, when I feel like I have something I'm excited about, then I share. Um, or even if it's just a process video that I think is cool, you know, it is very easy, I think, to fall into this pattern of like appeasing the public, of like wanting the likes, wanting the just that positive reinforcement.
Of
But
course.
you know, yeah, it's like you have to check yourself and make sure, like, well, am I creating for myself? And not that there's anything wrong with it, or am I creating for others? But you have to decide for yourself what's important. And then making sure that you don't like for me, I make sure that I'm still interested in what I'm doing. You know, if it's just going through the motions, then it's like, oh, yeah, you need to switch it up or do something else.
Of course. Of course.
Yeah.
If you can define things that are the most important to you, what would those be
In art making,
in general? and life making and life
Because
making.
life is art. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
What is most important to me? Um, so I think one of the biggest things for me is like curiosity. Being curious about what I do, why I'm doing it, a lot of self-reflection. Um, I think we only have, we're on this planet, we only have this short amount of time and we've been put into these flesh bags that we're in. And so it's like, I want to know my flesh bag. I want to know what I've been given.
I
And then
love
like,
I love just that sentence. I want to know my flesh bag. That should be like some sort of song or something. I want to know my flesh bag. I like that. Anyways, continue. Sorry.
thank you. Yeah, maybe if you ever write a song or something, keep that in mind.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I want to know my flesh bag. Yeah. Anyways, sorry.
Um, yeah, I think so like staying curious, I think having fun, like play and fun, basically all the things that we had as kids. When you watch kids or even like animals like dogs at a dog park, like they're or kids at a playground. It is exploration and fun and curiosity. And they're just like doing whatever. Like you're wondering like why are they choosing to do that thing? And they don't know. They're just doing it. And so there's something I think in that I hope and want to maintain throughout my whole life. Even if I'm 80, it's like I want that same curiosity and the same like lighthearted approach.
Totally, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I think that's a very important thing to be aware of you know, I think about this sometimes about how like and I like children too, or I like observing children because they're generally just such a bundle of joy and you know, they'll like look at their reflection in a puddle for like what could seem like an hour, in
Mhm.
our adult time. And to them, you know, I mean, I'm just kind of like fantasizing what they would think about, but you know, it's like something new, right? Depending on how old they are.
Yeah.
And I think that as we get older, generally we become accustomed to things, and something that so I read this article one time, it really affected me, and it was about how things seem to speed up as we get older.
Hmm.
And as children, we're uh, encountering so many new things all the time that it seems like time is slower.
Hmm.
But as we get older, generally people's days become more consistent, and generally people do similar things over and over, depending on how you live your life, right? And I was just thinking about that concept, and then when I mean, you and I have briefly talked before about taking psychedelics, and whenever I mean, depending on sometimes I'm like I'm gonna microdose today and write, and then that microdose turns into a macrodose, and
Yeah.
then and
Yeah.
then I'm writing now, and then but so just take a little too much, and here we are, and here we are. Um, but I guess what I was saying is in those macrodose moments, it's just like literally a couple seconds or like a minute seems like an hour, and you're like, oh wait, it's only been like I don't know, 5 minutes. I've been here
Yeah.
for like 5 minutes. It's been like an hour. I don't know. It just I don't know exactly what I'm trying to like cross reference there. Maybe something to do with like children and psychedelics, and not children on psychedelics, but children. The feeling of being a child, right?
Yeah.
I'm curious what you think about that. Just like I don't know, riffing off that.
Yeah. I mean, it's it's like a constant sense of wonder, right? So like when you're on
Yeah,
psychedelics, it's like the way you see reality has completely shifted. It's completely new, right? You're
literally, literally,
like the wall just has patterns and you could sit there for like what seems like an hour, 2 hours just staring at like the patterns
totally.
that are emerging.
Yes.
And I think
Yes.
then, yeah, like,
Yes.
when you see like a kid discover like a caterpillar and just
Uh-huh.
sit there and watches the caterpillar for an hour.
So good.
Um,
Love it.
yeah, it's this like, yeah, I feel like it really like takes the veil away from our everyday and gives us that
Mm,
same um newness that children have as they're learning.
totally. Do you ever
Yeah.
do psychedelics and look at your sculptures?
I I have not. I actually have not done that. I have had friends do that and they're like, "Oh my God, like you should definitely look at your sculptures when you're on like mushrooms."
Yes.
Um, but normally if I ever do macro doses, I'm like outside. So,
Yeah, that sounds nice.
yeah. Yeah, I'm not around like my work. I would not be able to get anything done in the studio. So,
Yeah, that's true.
you know,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
that's true. So what does a normal day look like for, or maybe a normal week for you? What does that generally look like?
So for the most part, I am here like if I'm working on a show or I have like a project or something, then I'm here more. Um, if I'm not working on a show, I'm usually here like five, 5 days a week. If I'm working on a show, then I'm here like maybe like the
Every
whole
day.
week.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, and then I try to work out every day. That's how I start my day. And then
What
I
kind
eat
of
lunch or I
workouts do you
make
do?
lunch. I lift. I like to lift.
Oh yeah. Like
So like weight
Olympic
training and stuff.
lifting or
Yeah. Yeah.
oh nice. Nice.
Like powerlifting, Olympic lifting. Yeah.
Yeah, like squats and
Um,
deadlifts and
uh-huh.
pull-ups and
Yeah.
things of that nature.
Yeah. So that's usually how I start my day. And then I make lunch and then I come to the studio. And the studio time is like, first few hours, I might just like respond to emails or like do a call or something like that.
Uh-huh.
Um, and then once like the late afternoon sets in, then like I feel the creative juices flowing and usually I just start working then. But some days, if I'm not working on a show, then I just like, I keep it loose for myself. Like I give myself room to just like do what feels right or what I need that day. So sometimes I could just like research stuff. Some days I could just like sit and look at my work and just like, just like think about it. Um, some days it's just exploring material and just playing around and experimenting.
Mhm.
Yeah. And so then I'm usually here until like, I don't know, I'd say like 11 or 12.
Mm.
Um, yeah. But
Yeah.
so right now I'm working on, my next mini drop, which is something I do once a year.
Hmm.
I make a bunch of miniature versions of my work and I do like a public sale through my website. And so
Hmm.
I'm very focused right now. Um, but once I'm done with that, like when I'm in between stuff, I like to like kind of do different things. Like last year I took voice lessons just cause I
Really?
didn't, yeah, I was just like, I never took like music classes or anything in school. And I was like, I'll just try some voice lessons and see what, see what that's like. Um,
How'd
and then
that
I
how did
did,
that go?
it was fine.
No, no, I mean, maybe not in terms of like how you perform, but like
Yeah.
what it added to your process or what it added to just you as a person.
I think I probably would have chosen a different teacher. So I found a music school and they were like, "Oh yeah, here's the teacher we have available." And I met with him and he was fine. And then like the more lessons we did, the more it wasn't about like the lesson and he would tell me about his like he was like a pastor in like a Baptist church and he would talk about like the
I like where
I'm
this
not
is
and I'm not
going.
and
Continue.
I have no background in this stuff. So I was
Sure,
like,
sure.
okay, this is new information. But he told me about like the drama that's going on within like the Baptist world about like singing and music and how there's like these different schools of thought as to like what music should be. And so it was more like
Interesting.
theology lesson. I don't like
Yeah,
I don't know.
yeah,
It
yeah,
was not what I expected.
yeah, yeah.
So
There we go back into the over intellectualization of things.
yeah,
It's like, why can't
right.
it just be sounds that come out of your mouth? Like,
Right.
why does
Yeah.
it, yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
So it found me again. Yeah, and then I would be curious to go back and try like piano lessons or something like that. I would do
Hmm.
that. But then I did a couple swimming lessons. That was
Nice.
cool. Yeah, but then
Nice.
I found out that I get motion sickness from that.
Oh,
So that
from
sucked.
swimming.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
your head spins or something or
Yeah, so like I mean I can swim, but I can't do like the official like the breaststroke and like so that's what I wanted to learn was technique.
yeah.
And one of the things you're supposed to do is like there's a like a line at the bottom of the pool and you're supposed to keep your eyes focused on that.
Hmm.
And for some reason like the motion, like every time I'd stop my lap, I'd be like real dizzy. Um
Oh, I
and I felt
see.
and I was like, "Oh, this feels like motion sickness." So I looked it up and
Hmm.
apparently it can happen. It's like it's a thing. Um
Hmm.
so yeah, that
Yeah,
kind of sucked.
I see. I
Yeah.
see.
Yeah.
Do you, so would you say that every year you try to just do something completely different, like singing and then swimming, and then what were some of the other things that you've done?
Um, so I would say it averages out to like once a year kind of thing, or like every year I
Yeah.
try something new, but it's more just based on like curiosity. So if like suddenly I feel the urge to like do something or something sparks my curiosity, I'll just follow it. So I think last year I started getting into skating, like rollerblades.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So I've been, and that's something I've kind of stuck with, but it's been very hot, so I haven't gone like in a few months, but like I've
Yeah.
gone to skate parks and I'll like do aggressive skating. So like, or
Oh,
try to. I'm not
you'll do like tricks and stuff?
like I'll try to. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Nice.
yeah. Like
That's cool.
I can like jump on some things. I can
Yeah.
like, like do kind of like a little. I'm trying to get like the quarter pipe or half pipe or whatever, like going back and forth.
Oh, that's cool.
Um, I mean, yeah, and that's different. That's like it's fun because it's like
Hmm.
something that is just like different from the everyday and
Hmm.
I feel myself getting better every time I go. So it's not like something I have to constantly be doing like every single day to improve.
Sure, sure, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, just like whatever something might come up and I'm just like, oh, I'll check that out, like
Nice.
and then maybe it's like swimming where it's like, oh, now I'm like I have motion sickness, so I shouldn't do
Sure.
this,
Yeah, yeah.
but
Do you find
yeah.
that over the course of your life, from one only child to another only child,
Yeah.
that that you've tried lots and lots and lots of different things?
Yeah, I would say most of them have to do with like physical things, like exercise related.
Oh, okay.
Um,
Nice.
yeah, I would say that's usually the place where it goes for me. So like I've done all kinds of stuff like CrossFit, yoga, um, boxing.
Hmm.
Like I think the next thing maybe is trying like Krav Maga, like self-defense classes. That I think that
That's
would
cool.
be
Yeah.
something fun to like check out and
Yeah.
it's useful.
Nice.
Um, yeah, and I mean I have like other hobbies. Like I love plants, so I like, I spend a lot of time like doing plant stuff.
Uh-huh.
Um, yeah, there's a lot of I feel like there's a just like we were saying, life is art, art is life. I think that all of that stuff, it makes its way, whether direct or not, into the work. So
Totally.
the more experience, the more variety, the more different sources, you have coming in to
Hmm.
filter out. Like, I think it's, I think it's helpful. Not that that's why I seek things out. I don't, like I said, I just follow curiosity. So if I listen to a podcast and someone's talking about something and I'm like, oh, that sounds interesting. Let me look into that, like
Yeah.
that kind of thing. Yeah.
I dig that. I like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think, having that flexibility makes things makes life a lot more interesting. But it
Hmm.
also, um, I think, I think being open is a really good thing, And
Hmm.
I think like not all people, but I think sometimes as we get older, we can get kind of like stuck in doing like a specific thing um or starting to feel like jaded about
Hmm.
certain things. And I think it's like good to be able to be open and also I don't know. I just think about that sometimes, I guess, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I think that relates back to what we were talking about with kids, like they're very open. They're very receptive.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. And like if you are closed off, then that closes off curiosity, I think, like you're not, yeah, you're like limiting yourself almost.
Hmm.
Uh,
Yeah. And if you're closed off, I think it puts in a certain, I mean, if we're, if we're all just stardust and energy, and if you close yourself off, other people will feel that energy from you,
mhm.
whether that's in a conversation or whether that is in like meeting some new people or, the way that you look at your work or, uh, and it's really hard to define that, this sort of like rigidity or, you know, I'm curious, what are some of your uh, like things that you like to do in terms, I mean, do you like to listen to podcasts or like things that you like to get creative inputs from, like films or um museums or I mean, what are some of the things that you find most enjoyable, although it's probably not easy to just say like, oh, it's only this or that,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm. So I listen to a lot of audiobooks while I'm working. Uh
You have some good
I do listen
recommendations for us.
Do I have good recommendations? Yeah, so lately I've been on let's see, what did I just listen to? This book called Horse. It's
Horse.
by Geraldine Brooks. It's a
Uh-huh.
literary fiction. It's actually really good.
Cool.
Um it's so sometimes when I pick books, I'll just read the brief summary and I'm just like, okay, and I actually try to forget what the book is about because I like to be surprised by like when I start listening to it and just it just
I did
comes, right? So you don't
I dig that because I hate it when like you go to, well, I mean, I don't hate it necessarily. Everyone's different, right? But I personally don't prefer it when you go to a movie or something and then
uh-huh.
like someone's like, oh, I need to know everything that it's about and read all the reviews. And I'm like, dude, just fucking experience the movie.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't know, but
Yeah.
I guess like you're preaching to the choir, like I'm like, I don't even want to know what it's about. I'm just gonna watch it kind of a thing. So
Yeah.
anyways,
Yeah, it's fun that way. You just kind of it's like an adventure. You don't know what's coming. Um
yeah.
so this book Horse was is it's well, I guess so then maybe I shouldn't say what it's about.
No, 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 no,
But
no. Tell me, no, tell me what it's about. I mean, because a book can be, like I could say like, oh, this is the beginning, middle, and end, but you actually have to
yeah.
experience it. Do you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
yeah,
For
yeah.
sure. Yes. So basically there are three stories being told. Um One is about and they all connect, which is why I think this book was so well written and especially listening to it as an audiobook. But it was about like the thoroughbred horse racing in pre-Civil War days and like the relationship between like I guess the wealthy and the horses that they would breed. And
Hmm.
then following the storyline of this painter who painted these horses. And so then it would skip to present day where there were these like scholars who had discovered this painting of this very famous horse and then them trying to figure out like who's the horse, where did this painting come from? And then it all kind of connects
Hmm.
in a really beautiful way. But it was cool because it talks about art and there's some I was like, oh yeah, I know what they're talking about, like the lingo and the jargon and all this stuff. It's
Yeah.
fiction.
Cool.
I don't know, it's just really good and it deals with race and it deals with all kinds of topics. It's really good. So
Wow.
like stuff like that, yeah.
Sounds
Stuff like
really
that,
good.
like
Yeah.
I highly recommend. I love fiction because I mean, if I listen to nonfiction, I can't focus on my work. I have to I can't, I just literally can't listen to nonfiction when I'm working.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah. I get it.
yeah, it's so weird. I
Yeah.
mean, I know people who are like listening to like self-help books while they're working and stuff. And it's like, I can't focus on those two things, like
I
making and then
understand.
like, how do I better myself? Um,
Sure. Sure.
but
I like listening to I mean, if I were to listen to a self-help book, I would listen to it at like at the gym or something.
Yeah, yeah,
because it's like
yeah.
I'm kind of like helping myself already,
Uh-huh.
and then I'm
Yeah,
gonna,
yeah.
I gotta
That
pump
makes
myself
sense to
up,
me.
and then I'm gonna pump
Yeah.
myself up mentally as well,
Uh-huh.
you know.
Yeah.
So yeah,
It's the most efficient use of your time.
yeah, yeah. Let's
Yeah.
efficiencies. Damn it, we need efficiencies. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, yeah, so that's a book I just listened to. And a lot of times like the books, they're just like I just like a good story while I'm working.
Totally.
Um, and I don't really know if I could say that like the books work their way into the work, but I think, everything does. Everything always does.
I believe
Um,
that. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So there's that. But then sometimes right before I listen to uh my last like few audiobooks, I went on this binge of the Lex Friedman podcast. Um,
Ooh, I've
which is
have you listened to the Ray Kurzweil episode?
no, I have not.
Oh man,
I have not.
such
Let
a
me
good one. Such
okay,
a
hold
good
on, let me write
one.
that down.
Yeah.
Well, so what I did was I was on a Rick Rubin kick. And
Ooh,
then I was like, oh
do
my
you listen
gosh,
to his audiobook?
I've started reading his audiobook or his book.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
started it as an audiobook and I was like, no, I can't do that. I have to read this. So I bought the physical book.
Oh,
And I'm working
cool.
my way through it right now.
I just
Uh,
finished it, the audio version. I was
uh-huh.
listening to his very soothing
Oh my
voice.
God, his voice. Yeah.
I know. I'm just like,
Yeah.
speak to me, my brother, please. Yeah. No, he has a great voice, and but
Yeah.
he has such good advice in that book.
Yes.
I, for artists, you know.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, that's the thing is because I was like, while I'm working, it's like, oh, I want to take notes. I want to like write like little
uh,
so I can't listen
makes
to
sense.
his audiobook while I'm working. Otherwise I have to stop. Um,
Mhm.
but maybe after I read the physical book, I can just listen to it. But yeah, I was on this big Rick Rubin kick and I found him on the Lex Friedman podcast. And then I was like, oh, well, I love Lex. Like he's awesome. So then I started
Yeah.
listening to a bunch of his podcasts. So sometimes, it kind of, it oscillates. And then sometimes like I'll listen to like shows that I know really well, like The Office or It's Always Sunny, like comedies.
Oh, you'll listen
Um,
to them.
yeah, like they'll just play in the background. I won't watch them because I know them. Like I've seen them
Yeah,
so many
makes
times.
sense. Okay. Yeah.
Um, so it's just something that's like lighthearted and funny and like, you can tune in or tune out.
Hmm.
Um, yeah.
Nice. Nice. Gosh, there's just so much material out there now that it's like I don't know, it's hard to I was gonna say it's hard to choose, but sometimes you just choose and then, or it finds you. I like
Hmm.
to think more of that on that sort of spiritual kick, like, like, oh, the book
Yeah.
finds you, or, it's like when you're ready, then it'll find you, it'll speak to you, the more
Yeah.
romanticized version of reality, I think is more
Uh-huh.
fun. But
That's how I feel
mm,
about when I was in college, that's how I felt about psychedelics because it was hard to find. So like if
ah,
instead of seeking it out, if somebody I knew was like, "Oh, I have acid. Do you?" And I'm like, "Yeah, okay."
do
Because
I? Yes. Do I?
um
You're just like, oh, shh, shh, shh. Yes. Yeah. No,
exactly, yes.
no. I mean, I was gonna say that I don't have it. Oh, crap. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, they're like, actually, I was asking if you had any. Um,
Yeah. No, now we're both let down, and now
yeah,
this is awkward. No, it's like,
yeah,
yeah, yeah. That's
yeah.
cool.
That's
I dig.
I agree with that. I like that's a fun way to approach things or have things approach you. It's like, oh
I
yeah,
think
why not? Because it's like it's
totally,
presented itself to me.
totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, in Brazil, they do. Well, I don't know if all cities, but they have delivery shrooms.
Oh. Oh
Yeah,
wow.
you just go on this website and you
Uh-huh.
say, "I want my shrooms here," and that's it. You pay through a credit card, and yeah,
Wow.
yeah. So
Um,
kind of
can you
awesome.
choose can you choose what kind? Like the strain?
Well, this one place that I went to, they I think they only have one type.
Okay.
So, but I mean that's for this specific city, and I think I don't
Gotcha.
know if yeah they deliver like everywhere in Brazil,
Hmm.
but yeah, I don't know.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah,
If
super
I
cool.
come to Brazil, I know who I'm gonna hit up.
Yeah. Definitely. You should definitely come to Brazil. Brazil's
Yeah.
amazing. I intended to spend 2 months here, and I've been here for about four and a half.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
So yeah,
That's
it's
really
pretty
cool.
cool. Yeah. Yeah. But
Okay. Noted.
noted. Ding. All right. So let me think. So what are some things that you're most excited about, and maybe some like final let's go there, and then I'm going to ask you about like, advice and final thoughts and things like that. But like, what are some of the things that you're most excited about right now?
So next year, I only have so normally I do like one or two solo shows a year.
Uh-huh.
And next year my next solo show is in the fall. So I have a lot of time. So I'm excited about that in between like shows.
Nice.
Um so yeah, I don't know what I have nothing like no hard plans or anything, but I'm sure like
Mhm.
some travel and like, whatever comes up. And that's kind of my favorite thing. Just like if I give myself the space and time, then like things just I can just go with the flow. Things that come up, people are like, "Oh,
That's
you want to
cool.
come here?" And I'm like, "Yeah, okay, cool, let's do it." Like that kind of
Nice.
thing.
Nice.
So I'm excited about that.
Mhm.
Um, I have some ideas for new work. So once I'm done working on this mini drop, I can start like exploring that. So I'm excited
Mhm.
for that. I'm excited to like explore new ideas, different ideas.
Mhm.
Um, yeah,
Nice.
I'm excited for it not to be hot.
Yeah. I'm sure
I'm
it's
excited for that.
incredibly hot over there. What
Yeah.
what is the what is the temp how, what has the temperature been over there recently?
Been like, I think today it's like it's 105 right now.
Oh, just 105.
Um,
Oh, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
you
it's
know.
fine.
Yeah.
My goodness. That's wild.
Yeah. And we haven't had rain. So like be excited for some rain. That would be
Yeah.
nice. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. And now what are you not excited about? I'm just kidding. Let's complain for the rest of the time. No,
Yeah.
so yeah, I guess just to conclude, but like and thank you so much for being so generous with your time. Like, what is some advice that you would give out to um the little child out there, the little version of yourself that's listening to this podcast in another dimension? No.
Aw.
No, I'm just kidding. Just
Um,
the people who are listening to this.
I'm like, I'm like,
What
um,
would she want to know?
yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see. I mean, I would definitely say follow your intuition, listen to it, like
Yeah.
learn to listen to it. Even
Mhm.
if, and actually, I think even if you don't follow it, then you learn like, oh, I should listen to it. So
Hmm.
hone it. Um, yeah, and just like have fun. I don't
I dig
know.
that.
Yeah. I mean, I really think I think about this a lot and it's like, we're here and it's like, why would you not have fun? Why would you not play? Why would you not
I
like,
feel that. Yeah, I feel you on that. Yeah.
and
Totally.
obviously like it takes balance and all of that stuff. But I think a lot of times, like one of the aspects of getting older, things get very serious. People get serious. They have their routines, they have their structure, they have,
Yeah.
just these things in place and life happens like worry, stress, all that stuff. And I think just
Mhm.
keeping in mind, like, this is a, I mean, this is it. This is all there is. Like, as far as we know
Yeah,
in this
exactly.
moment. So it's like, why not just keep it light, have some levity,
Totally. I love
enjoy
that.
it. Yeah.
I love that. I love that. Yeah. I think it's like I think that's great advice. Sometimes it's good just to, such as the Tao would say, keep to the simple. And I
Mm.
think part of keeping it simple yeah, have some levity and be light.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, also, feel your feelings. I think that's a good one too. That's an
Feel
important
your
one.
feelings.
Feel your feelings. Yeah.
Feel your feelings.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, because I think sometimes, it's easy to kind of like feel things and then just kind of like put it on the back burner and be like, oh, I'll worry about that later, or not
Yeah.
worry, but whatever, like I'll think about that later, whatever.
Like
Or
compartmentalize
again,
it.
life happens. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Uh-huh.
But I think yeah, I think when your feelings come up, just feel them, and then it's easier to let them be, let them go.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think feeling the feelings, knowing that it's okay, knowing that
Hmm.
this will pass,
Yeah.
uh, write them down, speak about them,
Hmm.
even if it's just to yourself, put them in, a journal or something and know that they're
Yeah.
real, but they're not totally you. It's just what you're feeling at that moment, right? And that could be
Yeah.
happiness, that could be depression, that could be, but I think like understanding that, these it's like a part of you, but it's not all of you, right?
Hmm. Yeah. It doesn't define you.
Yeah.
Um, they're all just a part of being human.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think like it's like feeling your feelings means I think move like having them move through you. So like you said, like talking about them, that's movement, right? That's like it's coming
Yeah.
out, or writing them down, that's movement. Making something, creating,
Totally.
it's moving, you know? So
Hmm.
like, yeah,
Totally.
yeah,
Yeah. 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 I think, well, I mean, if you think about it like a food or something, if you, let's say you put that in some sort of jar and hide it away in your cupboard, and
hmm,
eventually that food will rot
yeah,
and that smell will permeate the
yeah,
entirety of your cupboard, right? So
yeah,
I think it's good to now I have to work off that fucking metaphor. I'm like, well, now what do we do with it? Anyways,
yeah,
everyone can kind of make their own mind what they do with those
yeah,
feelings that are, in this food form.
yeah,
But anyways, thanks so much for your time. I really appreciate it. And yeah, hopefully, yeah, we can do this again and you can come on, again in the future. Whenever I have people on, generally they have, like check up every a couple years or something, because I've been doing this podcast
yeah.
for like almost 9 years now, 8 years, something like
Wow.
that. Yeah.
Well, yeah, that'll be
So
cool because then I can tell you if the things I was excited about happened
yeah.
or what came of it. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe for your solo show next year. Yeah.
Yeah. That'd
Cool.
be great. Thank you for
All right.
having me.
No, thanks. No, I appreciate you. Yeah. And I wish you nothing but the best. Yeah.
Thank you. You too.
All right. All right. Take care.
Bye.
Bye bye. Music for the podcast is by Rarebit, aka Justin Dosher Hopkins. YouTube and creative support is by Tyler Scully. Thanks so much for tuning in. See you next time.